Okay, so for this example, I don't need this pink eraser anymore. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to click on it with my black arrow. Now that it's active, I'm going to delete it by hitting delete. Okay, so I just got rid of that. I'm also going to reset my workspace. So I'm going to go to Window, Workspace, Reset Essentials Classic. I'm going to set my toolbar into 2 columns, and I'm going to tear away my layers panel. So I'm sort of starting from scratch. I'm sort of cleaning this all up. Okay, so I want to teach you how to illustrate using what's called the additive method. But before I do that, I want to talk about some tools and features that you might want to consider when you start illustrating. Now, one of the things that I highly advise students when they're illustrating is to look at primitive shapes as a potential solution for illustration. Primitive shapes. What do I mean by primitive shapes? I mean circles, squares, rectangles, pills, triangles, polygons, primitive, basic shapes. Now, before you think, why is he talking about silly little shapes? Before you pass judgment on that, I'd like you to look around this room. And I want you to look at man-made objects. And I want you to look at that clock over there on that wall. That is basically a primitive shape. What primitive shape is that clock on the wall? It's a circle or an ellipse. Depending on the angle, it's an elliptical shape. Look at the shape of this monitor. There's actually a shape in the Illustrator primitives called a rounded rectangle. You'll notice it's rectangular and it has a radius on the corners. That's a primitive shape. It's a rounded rectangle. Look at the base that the monitor is on. It's a distorted rectangle. There's a shape cut out of it. What is that? A circle. Look at the tiles in the ceiling. What are they? A collection of rectangles. When you start looking at objects around you, you can reduce them to primitives. In many cases, you can illustrate things with great complexity through primitives. There's actually a formal logo illustration strategy where you build the logo from primitives to have the cleanest line work possible. That's called pathfinding. You pathfind a logo through primitive shapes. The Twitter logo is drawn through pathfinding ellipses. It's like a series of 13 circles that overlap and become the little bird. So my point is that even though it might seem like a silly shape, it's actually a powerful illustration tool. Does that make sense? Okay, so where are the creation tools? I call them the creation tools because they allow me to make objects. And so the first step, these are the selection tools. The second group are the creation tools. And you'll notice that when we hover over them, it tells us what they are called. And we will go over all of these at some point. But today, I want to focus on these tools right here. You'll notice that the first one that I see is called the rectangle tool. Okay, now, you'll notice that the icon has a little white triangle in the bottom right corner. That indicates that there are more options underneath it. So to activate the additional options, I hold my mouse down and it populates this list. Now that I have the list, I'm going to click on this sidebar and it's going to tear the set away. So let me do that one more time. So I'm going to click on this rectangle, hold my mouse down, and then I'm going to click on the sidebar. I'm just going to let go, boop, and it's going to tear this set away. So I'd like you to do the same. I want you to tear this little set away. And whenever I work with a tool that I'm using repetitively, I'll tear it away and I'll set it next to my workspace somewhat close to it. You see that? Somewhat close to it. Okay, so we're going to illustrate 3 different things today. And so I want to prepare my workspace to illustrate these 3 things. You'll notice that I have 3 artboards, correct? So I'm going to illustrate an object in each one of these artboards. Okay, we're going to illustrate a bowling ball. That's going to be in one artboard. We're going to illustrate a donut. That's going to be in a second artboard. And we're going to illustrate our cartoon. And that's going to be in a third artboard. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes, Angela.
Do we just get rid of the eraser?
I deleted my eraser, yes. I just selected it and deleted it. So is everybody prepared with your 3 artboards? So this is an assignment we're all going to do together. And you're going to turn this in for credit. So please make sure that you stay with me. It's really, so a couple of things I want to mention. These first 4 meetings that we have for about week 1 through week 4, they're really important. If you don't pick something up, it could really affect the next feature we're about to learn. So today is really important. We all need to get through these illustrations. We all need to illustrate a bowling ball, and we all need to illustrate a donut, okay? So at the very least, we need to get that far, okay? So here's my layer panel. And you'll notice that my layer panel has 1 layer. I want to create 2 more layers. And we discussed this already. I'm going to click on this little icon that looks like a page turning. And I'm going to click on that twice. And I'm creating a layer for each object that I draw. So I'm going to have a layer for a bowling ball. I'm going to have a layer for a donut. And I'm going to have a layer for a character. Does that make sense? So currently, what layer am I working on? What layer am I working on currently? Somebody besides William? Layer 3, correct. I am on layer 3. How do you know that? So it's highlighted in blue. It's highlighted in blue. Okay, what layer am I on now? Layer 1. So the active layer is the one that's highlighted with that color. All right, I want to change the name of layer 1. I want to change the name of it. So there's 2 ways we can do this. Okay, one is I can click really quickly right on the name. You see that? I clicked really quickly right on the name, and I'm going to call this bowling ball. Okay. Another way that I can get to the name is I'm not going to click twice on the name. I'm going to click twice away from the name in this empty space. In this empty space. I'm going to click twice right there. 1, 2. Oh, let me do that again. So when I did that, it opened up what? What does it say here? Layer options. Let me do that one more time. Right, look. I'm not on the name. I'm to the right. It's an empty space. Double click. Boom. Layer options. So do you see the name field? Right, so I'm going to call this one donut. I think this is how you spell donut. Yeah, I'm good? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. All right, and then the last one, layer 3, I'll name it later. So a couple of other things. The bowling ball layer is what color? The bowling ball layer is what color? Blue. The donut layer is what color? Red. And the third layer is green. So every layer has a different color at this point. That's really important. Remember the bounding box? Remember the blue box around my eraser image? It was blue because it was in a blue layer. So if I draw something in layer 3, what color is its bounding box going to be? Green. Okay, so good. The objects that live in that layer will have an edge or a bounding box that matches the layer color. So it's a visual aid. Okay? So I'm going to select the bowling ball layer, and that's the one that I'm going to start drawing in. Okay, and I'm going to go to this artboard over here, and this is the one that I'm going to work on.